Okay, so welcome back, everybody. This is the Thrive Co-Living Communities YouTube podcast. Always a mouthful, and I'm happy to be able to get that out. Welcome back. Glad to have you. We've got a great guest here today. Laura Wood is an HR consultant. Her consultancy is called Out of the Woods HR, and she's here to talk about some pitfalls in recruiting and hiring as part of our Thrive business series, and how you can avoid those to avoid lawsuits, work comp claims, and other possible negative repercussions from bad recruiting and hiring practices. Welcome, Laura. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and jump in. I think not only are we in a unique market for real estate, but we're in a unique market for talent as well. This is the first part of August 2021 that we're recording this. So first of all, sort of sum up what this hiring and recruiting situation is as we're hopefully coming out of COVID. We've got the variant that's rearing its head at the moment. And my best information is that there's a shortage, but that it's not across the board. There are certain jobs that there is a shortage for, but certain ones not so much. So first of all, paint the picture of what you see as an HR consultant as to the state of this market in terms of employment.
That's a great question. And the thing that I see from where I sit is that what has happened with COVID and what has happened with people sort of being forced into working from home. It wasn't, there were many people that didn't choose that wouldn't have chosen it if they had to. And while I say that, those are the people that are saying now, I'm not ready to go back for whatever reason, whether it's kids at home, kids that haven't been vaccinated, because young kids under 12 haven't been vaccinated yet. So what is happening in the minds of those individuals, many of them, and I've talked to several who are saying, if I'm going back, I want some type of hybrid work situation from what I had before. I don't necessarily want to be home all the time, but I also don't want to be in the office all the time. So where I see things and the conversations that I have had is that new reality that's out there for businesses and business owners to face, it's not necessarily a shortage of talent. What it is the talent has decided that they're going to make some decisions now, and they're kind of in the driving seat. You're right, though. You did say that there are some that are not hybrid workers. A surgeon is not going to do surgery from home. So those types of positions, nurses and doctors, and those types of positions wouldn't be a hybrid situation, but so many other positions can be.
We're talking about middle management, office workers, yes, corporate employees.
Yes. And I think really from my experience and from my background in human resources for over 30 years, I predominantly was always in the office. I mean, I was, as a manager, as a leader, I could work remotely. I mean, I could work from home. But generally that was a manager's job is 24/7 sometimes, depending on what your position is. So it wasn't an option, though, for really the majority of my position to be remote. It just wasn't.
Mm-hmm. But I think we are hearing that there are employers that are truly having a hard time filling positions. Do you think that all of it is attributable to people just hesitating to go back, and the office workers? I mean, I think it's It's problems even at the lowest end with fast food, um, and those workers as well. It seems to be across the board. You see out in
Mhm.
front of restaurants, help wanted all over the place. On the
Sure.
lower end of the economic wage ladder, are there some people that are hesitating to go back because they're still getting that COVID bonus, and to go back would mean to take a pay cut? I think we hear a lot of that there's some of that. What do you see?
Well, I would say for one thing, the people that make a determination or a judgment on why people aren't going back to work, they're not those people. They're not the people that have been trying to get unemployment or they've been trying to get some of that bonus. It's not a lot of money. I mean, it's a very pittance, really, when you come right down to it. So those individuals, first and foremost, all of my years just and being a human driving down the street, I mean, restaurants are always hiring. I mean, that's something that is a constant churn. They that is something that is an expected happening, that when they're hiring staff, that staff may be seasonal because they may be college students. Whatever it is, generally, food services employees are not employees that are employees for life. Now, there are some that are, and that's fine. So those positions that are those frontline positions, and especially in food services, I think that some of their not returning to work has to do a lot with things that they have no control of. I mean, some of the young people, I mean, they don't want to wear masks, but the employer is requiring them to wear a mask. And so they may be deciding that they're not going to do that anymore. On the flip side of that, there may be people also that are those same employees or similar employees working in the restaurant that are not comfortable being there when customers are coming in without masks, but they're being required to wear the mask. So that's something that is, and I can't speak to all of that. And that obviously there are different generations, that are involved in this. And this is like a lifetime of I mean, all the generations, I mean, like 5 generations are in the workforce now. And it's been something that when you have all of these individuals that are working and they're in different industries, each person, and that's where, from an HR perspective, I've had to change my communication to leaders because my message to leadership was consistency. What you do for one, you do for all. My message has changed because our mindset has to change. Employers need to look at every individual and their individual situation. Now, you might have a policy or a procedure on attendance that applies to everybody. However, you have an employee that has a situation that they have a family member that they care for that has long haulers, and they're home and they are their primary person. So they may not be able to be there on a schedule that fits everybody else's needs. So that's where we have to really insert a more human um, way of thinking when it comes to the way that employees are treated. And so I really do think that there are individuals that are maybe just sitting on the sidelines. And I also have to say that there may still be people that are getting money from the government that are not going back. As long as the government's paying me, I'm not going back. I just think that's a small portion, though. I don't think that's a large number of people.
Hmm.
And it's been a nightmare. Unemployment has been a nightmare for so many people that got a little bit of money, and then they got stopped and they didn't understand why, and then they couldn't get an employment, an opportunity to go in and talk to somebody. So they were in like the black hole of unemployment.
Hmm.
So from
So,
my perspective, who would want it? It's a headache.
so what you're saying is this old argument about cause and effect. We may be, because we're now out of COVID, we may be seeing signs for help wanted in restaurants. They were always there, but now because we're coming out of COVID, we go, oh, there are all these people that are looking for restaurant jobs because of, or there are all these open restaurant jobs because of COVID. So it's not cause and effect. Okay, so let's get to our topic. And really what you were just saying, I think, I don't have an HR background, but I suspect that treating employees differently based on their situation could be a precursor to a lawsuit, and the very problems that we're here to talk about now. So talk about some of the pitfalls, and I don't know, we did talk about this topic beforehand, and I don't know if you have a 1, 2, 3 list, but talk about some of the pitfalls in recruiting and hiring that can lead to big trouble for an employer, whether it be a lawsuit, whether it be an EOC complaint, work comp problems. Give us some of those.
Okay. Well, I think that when you talk about that 1, 2, 3, I mean, there are a lot of lists, but I truly think that what starts out with any type of recruitment, when you're going to hire, when a company is going to hire someone, they have to have a really accurate idea about what the job is. What is the job that they're hiring? There's so often smaller employers may not even have job descriptions. So someone may be hired for whatever position. They may be hired as a teller at a bank, or they might be hired as a restaurant frontline worker. If there's not a job description that really outlines what the job is, how are they going to make a decision on who the candidate that's going to be able to fill that job? So it's really for the employer's own peace of mind. Okay, I'm going to hire someone, and this is the things that I need them to do. So they need to really have a good idea about who they're what they're looking for, what kind of candidate they're looking for. They also need to know where's the talent pool. They need to have some idea of where they're going to look for their candidates. Oftentimes employers have been, in my experience, especially, the small to mid-sized employers, they're afraid of technology. And I am a big advocate for applicant tracking systems. I mean, that is something that there's all kinds of acronyms in the HR world, but it's an ATS. An applicant tracking system is something that if a company has that kind of technology, then that can help alleviate some of those minefields that you talked about as far as, getting sued. Now, I will tell you 100%, there's not anything that any employer can do that's going to make sure that they're never sued. We are a litigious, we're in the United States of America. We are very litigious people. So there's a lot of times that lawsuits happen because, and it really catches employers unaware because they weren't prepared for it. So, that's something that really, doing some good things up front to make sure that you know what the job is, you know where you're going to look for your candidates, and how are you going to track those candidates when they're coming through, because you want to make sure that when you are opening the positions up and you're getting all kinds, if you're hiring for an entry-level position, and I know this for absolute truth, an entry-level position anywhere in any business, you may get 5,000 applicants because there's anybody that can meet the requirements for the job are going to apply, especially if they're just desperate and they're applying for everything. So you want to be very clear about what the position is when you're posting that position, and it's something too that you need to make sure that they're not showing bias in the candidates that you are bringing in to interview. So you really have to have, for me and my years of recruiting, it was always to make sure that the best, so you say you post a position, you get 100 applicants. I mean, day one, and that's not unreasonable. You get 100 applicants. Well, my way and the way that I handled that was the first in, first out. And you're not going to interview all 100 of candidates. You're not. So you take the first 10. So how many candidates am I going to interview initially? So you take the first 10 that meet the requirements of the job according to their application. Now, that's another thing when I say according to their application and according to what they've said, they may say they meet all the requirements. You don't know that, but there's a lot of dishonesty when it comes to recruiting and it comes to applying for jobs. People want to make themselves look like they're eligible for the position so they can get their foot in the door. So those are things that when I mentioned an applicant tracking system, it makes it much easier to have, you've got those candidates, and then that's all going to be tracked, and you don't have to do a whole lot of heavy lifting when you have that, because you're going through those candidates and you're able to look at them on the screen. All the candidates are there. So it's one pool of candidates. And a lot of times that is when when a company has that applicant tracking system, wherever they post their jobs, it feeds them directly into their website, directly into that pool of candidates. And so it helps to ensure that people aren't being left out. I mean, as best you can. And candidates will feel like they were never considered. Well, I'm telling you, if 100 applicants applied for that position that I mentioned, not all 100 are going to get interviewed, probably not even a percentage, maybe less than 10% of the candidates that applied for that job are even going to be looked at, because first in, first out is the way that the government will allow for that. When you say, this is my process, this is our process, and we do this for every position, then you have a defense if you are challenged by the government with that. So you're not going to avoid 100%. You're not going to avoid being sued. If people want to sue somebody, they're going to do it. If they think they're going to get money for nothing, they're going to find a way to do that. However, if employers do the right thing, if they make it and really put all the things that they know that they want to achieve in hiring that position, then if they get that all ironed out before they put the position out there and start hiring and start interviewing, that's going to make it a lot, from a legal standpoint, it's going to make it look a lot better for the employer. Because I tell you, if the company is sued, if somebody sues in a company, I had this experience at a healthcare organization in this town in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was a time that we were hiring nurse aides, which is a very low level position, not a whole lot of education required for it. And we had the position posted, and I referenced that 100 applicants in one day. That position had 100 applicants in one day. And an individual that didn't get interviewed filed a charge against the hospital that they had been discriminated against based on their age. That applicant was number like 99 out of 100. They had never even, their resume or application had never even been looked at, but they filed an age discrimination charge against the company. Well, the company had that applicant tracking system that I mentioned. And because of that, all of that data was there. For companies that don't have something like that, it's all paper. It's all, whatever their process is, it's very easy to, even though you did the right thing, to not have it there at hand, to not have it all in a way that you were not just, flailing and like trying to, where did that go and how many candidates did I have? So that's really important. And, when I mentioned bias, sometimes when people are looking at those candidates, it's going to be very important. Sometimes people make judgments because of someone's name, and because they have this name, they're probably this race, and that is something that is completely illegal, to start to try to identify what someone is based on their name or based on their whatever that is. And for recruiters, just hands down, everyone knows that those are things that you're not looking for. You're not looking to see what, and companies they generally have an EEOC statement. We don't discriminate based on race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity. All of those things are ingrained in our brains, and we don't, and we shouldn't. I'm not saying that some don't, but those are really ways when employers are trying to put their best foot forward to get the right candidate in place. They have to be prepared. They have to have the things up front to make sure that they know what the job entails and what kinds of candidates they're looking for and where they're going to be posting those positions. So those are some things that, while it may not alleviate the legal aspect from a lawsuit, it will at least set the company in good stead so that if somebody does sue them, they're prepared for it. I mean, as best they can. I mean, like I said, there are zingers that come from out of nowhere, and those can leave people with losing sleep at night. Part of why. I'm sorry, I didn't turn my phone on silent.
That's okay. So let me ask you this. I'm aware that there are people, let's move to work comp a little bit, that there are people that actually shop for employers to go to work for them and feign an injury so that they can collect work comp. Talk a little bit about how you, as an employer, recruiter, person that's hiring, can winnow those people out, or can you? And is there pre-employment screening that you can do? Are there questions that you can ask to try to ferret out that information? Let's talk about that phenomenon a little bit. And maybe a little bit on how widely spread you think that is. It's probably not broad. It's somebody that's very intent on doing that, but talk a little bit about it and how one might prevent that.
Okay, well, as you mentioned, applicant tracking or screening. That is something, I talked about the technology, I talked about applicant tracking systems. Generally, in my experience, when you post a job, whether it's on, Indeed or Career Builder or Monster or any of those job boards, and I'm really old school, so I'm mentioning ones that probably some other younger generations may have other things that I know that positions are being posted on Facebook and different things. So different platforms exist, and almost all of them have the ability for you to have screening questions. So before the applicant gets through, they're going to apply online. With an applicant tracking system, that's what they do. They apply online. And generally there are, maybe 5-6 questions that are really relevant to the job that are asked. And so that helps in identifying the candidates that are most in line with having the whatever the questions are, the training, the education, the experience, whatever those things are, gets you some insight into where they're coming, what they're bringing to the table. But when you mentioned that about workers' comp, and I in my experience, Mark, I don't think it's a great number. I know that there are people that are out there. Those individuals that are mentioned, they're litigious, that they want to get a little money for, just, feigning an accident. They're going to find a company that they can do that with. And it may be, and I guess that I say, and I'm very, probably not the only one that says you can Google anything. But I don't think that you can maybe necessarily Google lawsuits, but maybe you can, and I don't know that. But in my experience, I haven't had that where I've had a great number of employees that have been filing for workers' comp, we hired them and they hadn't been with us for any time and they were injured. it's just really hard to pin down. But in my experience, I don't, and I can't say that, I can't speak to that in the new world, the world that we're in right now. And I do. I mean, I hear, and I guess that I'd be interested in where that information that you've been hearing some of that, as far as people that are actually shopping for employers that they can get in the door so that they can get feign an injury. I mean, because that's not something that I have had really experience with. I mean, I've had employees that have had a workers' comp, and generally it is truly a workers' comp situation. But not that I haven't had a few that I'm kind of little eyebrow of, but it hasn't been a great number.
And I would
And
imagine
that's
that it's okay to ask certain questions. In other words, if let's say it's in a factory, that you can post, okay, this job requires that you be able to lift X number of pounds over your head,
yes,
that sort of thing. So you can ask
yeah,
those types of questions. But I would imagine you
yeah.
can't ask, have you been injured on the job before and filed a workers' comp claim? Correct.
You cannot ask those questions.
Okay.
The questions that you did mention, yes, you can. If there's a lifting, I mean, generally a job description, when I talked earlier on about job descriptions, there is a place on a job description that says how much, what kind of lifting, what kind of environment that you're working in. If you're in an environment that there's going to be lots of noise, you're in some type of warehouse and there's lots of machines. There's going to be something that will be in that job description that talks to that. The lifting, that will be another thing. I mean, you don't go to work for UPS to work in the hub and not be able to lift a certain amount of weight. So those are acceptable questions to ask. But no, you cannot ask if they've been injured, if they have any workers' comp background. You cannot ask those questions.
So talk about some of the other pitfalls that employers fall into and can avoid with education. That's why we're here. That lead to lawsuits, that lead to EEOC claims. What are some other examples and lessons to be learned?
Okay. Well, I think that one of the things that really comes to mind is that we have this, in my experience, we have this idea that when someone has a lot of education, they've gotten their bachelor's, they've gotten their master's, they're working on getting their doctorate. I mean, that candidate is not going to be a candidate that most likely will be applying for that entry-level position. But I can't speak to that necessarily. They may just be getting those entry-level positions while they're going to school. So I think that really, when you really get right down to it, the things that you can avoid when you are putting together some type of job that you're going to be hiring and recruiting for, decide how much education they need. But oftentimes we need a 4-year degree. And why you might not need a 4-year degree to do every job that's out there. I mean, there are people that are out there. I mean, think about Disney. He had no education. Look at what the world of Disney is. So the things that we put onto a job description, and we have expectations that someone's going to come in with 4 years of education or a degree, that sometimes that I would drop that to something like where they could have college preferred. I mean, those entry-level positions, you may want them to have some post-high school education. So you can say something where you don't put a number of years. The employers that say you must have 10 years experience, those are higher level positions. But also you're going to maybe limit some good candidates from even applying for it. So it's something that education is one of those things that, yes, it's great. And we do encourage people to, stay educated. When we stop learning, we stop growing. But there are just some people that, they get out of high school and they're not going to go to school. They're not going to go to, beyond high school. Doesn't mean that they can't be good employees and they can't learn skills to do things. that they didn't need a college degree to do. So I think from my perspective, you've got to be careful about where you're looking at that education as the determining factor, because oftentimes we get someone that has, you know, a very, very prestigious degree from an excellent university, you know, and, you know, Yale or Harvard or something like that. And you've got, okay, this is going to be a candidate that's going to rock the world. I mean, they're going to make us, you know, they're going to help us get to where we need to be. And they get in the door and, yeah, geez, that wasn't the case at all. So it's you know, putting all of your eggs in one basket because you're getting some really educated candidates doesn't mean that you're getting the best candidate for the job. The other thing too that I can say is that oftentimes there are so many people that are involved in determining when an offer is going to be made that you lose the candidate. And you know, if that's happening, the candidate's sitting on the sidelines, and right now this is an employee market. That I've lived through employer markets, employee markets. This is an employee market because those employees are leading this market, and employers might think that they are. I mean, yeah, it's their job. They're going to pay the candidate, but the employees are going to decide where they go. And if they sit there for too long, you're not going to be able to hire them. Now, somebody else will hire them. Those entry-level positions and those lower-level positions, there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of need. So you can't wait. I mean, it's not something that is going to benefit you as an employer. And you know, you also don't want to have on the opposite side. You're going to have some hard-to-fill positions. And those hard-to-fill positions, you have a manager that's breathing down your neck. You know, we can't keep the business open. We can't continue down this path if we don't have this candidate. What's going on? Where's the candidate? And when you have that happen, and recruiters have that happen, and they just put a warm body in the seat. That's all they're doing. They're not worried about whether that's the best candidate, but they're getting this manager off their back and putting the candidate. And generally, it's the manager that has made the decision. It's the manager that has said, "Go ahead and hire Jim. We want to make Jim an offer," and it wasn't anything more than getting someone, a physical person in that seat, and that can lead to lawsuits too, because that decision may have brought the wrong person into the company, and when that wrong person is in the seat, they could, you know, not have the skills that they said they had. They may be put out on the floor to do some job that they really weren't ready for. So you have to do your due diligence, and you have to really know the candidate that you've hired is the best candidate, and not that they can just fog the mirror. So it's a living body that I can put in that seat.
All right.
So yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about treating people differently, which you really started with. You know, if you've got someone or two people in the same job, and one, let's use the situation that you mentioned. One has a family member at home that's ill, maybe has a chronic problem, and you let them work partially from home, and you insist that employee B be there all the time. Let's say they don't have kids or family members depending on them. So treating people differently in the same position or similar work positions, I would imagine is an exposure for employers. Talk a little bit about that. And, you know, there's this tension because you said at the beginning that, you know, because of the tight labor market, employers are having to be a little more flexible. Does that open them up for lawsuits? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, as long as the thing, when you have a plan, when you have a process, and you know this is a tight labor market, and you've got to have some flexibility. When you're talking to that employee, you're going to hire them. And if it's a first shift position, first shift full time is these hours to these hours. And so when you're meeting with that candidate and you're determining whether you're going to hire them, that's when you're going to fill that gap. So you're saying that these are the hours that I need to fill for this shift. Can you work those hours? That's an acceptable question to ask. And so that's a more of a conversation generally with the recruiter, and between the recruiter and the candidate. Sure that is going to be a good timeline for them, for the candidate, for the applicant when they are hired. And that, generally will be determining what their schedule is going to be. Life happens sometimes, and then you have to make some adjustments. But as far as, generally there is a grid of hours that need to be filled depending on what the company is. If it's 24/7 business, there is a lot more ability to stretch out those hours. But really, when it comes to someone setting themselves up for a lawsuit or for an employee to complain to the Department of Labor, any type of entity that they could go and complain to, because there are many that they can go and complain to. But when that recruiter is hiring that candidate and talking to the candidate about the job and about the hours, that's sometimes the things that you iron out right up front. And the candidate may say very honestly, I can't work those hours, but I do need to work first shift. And so they can figure out what kind of shift that they can work. We're used pre-pandemic, it used to be a set amount of hours. So if you're hired for full-time first shift for this situation, you're going to be an 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. employee. Well, that needs to adjust, and I think it has adjusted, and people are going to really have those modified or hybrid work environments as well. So when that comes into being, and it is coming into being, those people that have those situations where they have a family member that's at home, that they are the primary caregiver for, they have a child at home that can't get vaccinated, and so they don't want to come to work where there's no mask requirements and there's the possibility that they may be exposed to the virus and then take it back home to their child who hasn't been vaccinated. So there's a lot of things that are out in this world right now that and I can't even begin to tell you all of them. But when it comes to employers making decisions when they're going to hire someone, and if they do something to treat Susie different than they treat Jamie, they have a reason for it. They have that, and when we do something, when an employer hires someone, other people aren't privy to what that offer was. We all get our, and if that's the other thing, as I was going to say, an offer letter, when you're going to hire someone, it's very important to have documentation. So I always encourage, and I have always done, an official offer letter to the prospective candidate that says, we're so glad that you're going to join us, and this is the position that we're hiring you for, and these are the hours. And so everything is ironed out and laid out in that offer letter, so they know when they show up day one, when is their orientation? What types of orientation are they going to have? Is it going to be a whole day orientation? Is it going to be an orientation for the company and then a separate orientation for the department? So a lot of that can be captured in an employee offer. And then those offer letters, they don't need to be, and they generally aren't shared between employee to employee, but there's a template for the offer letter and everybody gets one. But not everybody gets the same one because Susie may have had that situation. So she's not going to be able to work 100% in the office. So those offer letters are going to look a lot different this time around, depending on what that is. And it's going to be okay to do that. And I can't say for certain, and I imagine that there will be lawsuits because of that too. But it's just, where I said, and I did start out saying that, my pre-pandemic conversations with leaders was to be consistent in the way that they handle certain situations. Well, that consistency needs to be there, but it needs to be modified with how we're adapting to that. So you're not going to just let each individual person be completely different, but whatever their situation is, whatever their scenario is about their why they can't work 100% in the office, it's going to be different than someone that only wants to work in the office, doesn't want to work from home, or can't work from home.
So let's forget about hiring for a moment, and let's just talk about long-term tenured employees, because I do think this is coming up a lot, and let's keep this return to the workplace topic going here. So let's say you've got two people, and one has good reasons for not going back into the office, some of those that you mentioned, and the other lives alone, no other family members dependent upon them. And you say, okay, you've got to be in the office 40 hours a week, but employee B, who has these extenuating circumstances, you don't. You work 2 days a week at home. Are they setting themselves up for consequences? And what would those consequences possibly be? You're treating people of this, let's assume they're the same rank, same job function, and you're treating them differently. What's the possible repercussion for the employer?
Well, really, I mean, you mentioned tenure employees that have been with the company for a significant number of years. That's going to be something really, and those tenured employees, just as the newbies, the new ones that have joined the company, their lives have all of our lives have changed. So I think that in my mind, with those individuals, the fear for the employer should not be the treating Joe differently than brand new person that just came on board. It should be knowing what Joe needs, because unfortunately there's too little of that conversation going on with employees to find out where are they, in their minds and their situation, because there are acceptable questions that you can do that you can really show that compassion towards your employees. And if Joe's been with your company for 25 years and you haven't asked him how he's doing, how his family's doing, show that you really are invested in Joe. The big thing is, even though he's been there for 25 years, he may leave. He may decide that you really didn't have his back after all. I've worked for you for 25 years and you don't even know I have 5 kids and 6 grandkids, and that we all had COVID, and you don't even know those things. And so it's sort of that disconnect between the employer and the employee, and even the tenured employees. You may know some things, but how much have you invested in really getting to know the person and showing that person that compassion? Now, is the likelihood that somebody after 25 years is going to leave a company? I don't know that there's anything that we can say right now that is normal, that is the way that it used to be, because there are going to be people that are going to make that decision after 25 years that they're not going back, or they're not staying, or they're going to go someplace different, or they're going to do something different. Maybe they got to meet somebody that's talking about, buying a franchise. So they're going to say, okay, I'm throwing my hat in. I'm done with this. So, I think that as much as that legal aspect of it, because that's all, I guess, for me, when I'm talking to prospective clients, I hope that they see me as that individual that in partnering with me, I will provide them with the tools they need so that they can stay out of court as best they can. However, there are a number of employers that aren't asking those questions and that aren't getting those resources. So, they could very well be just streaming along and doing things the same way they were before and not getting the people to come in the door, to come to work for them, or the ones that have been there for a long time, they're leaving. So yeah, this labor market is a weird labor market that none
So
of us have experienced.
any other advice for employers on best practices for hiring and recruiting to stay out of trouble and to find good employees? Any other tips for them before we wrap up?
Okay, I think that, just really the things I've mentioned as far as having, really a well laid out plan. I mean, I've already mentioned that. But beyond that, one thing that I have not mentioned is that when you're getting ready to make that hire, you're getting ready to offer that position, or that person the position, you have to check their references. Now, I will tell you, checking references may not be anything but them telling you that if it's their previous employer. Generally, HR, if they have an HR department, the HR department has said no one gives references except for HR. So if anybody calls in to ask for a reference, they're going to get name, rank, and serial number. I mean, that's basically the way that it is. So when employers are calling for references and they're calling the previous employer, they're probably not going to get a lot of information that's going to tell them whether that employee did something illegal. Now, there are some things that if that employee did something illegal, that can be disclosed. I mean, if an employee has done something that they have been sanctioned, like say it's a nurse who diverted narcotics, that is discoverable, that is reportable. And there's ways to do that. And I always have to say too, depending on the company, they may not have attorneys. But generally that's something that before you are going to, you've got someone that's calling for a reference on that particular nurse, just for instance. And that nurse was, not only did that nurse get terminated, but she also lost her license. Well, if another hospital is going to recruit that nurse, they're going to know that she lost her license because that license is on the Kentucky Board of Nursing. So there are ways to check. Well, so for certain positions, if someone has a valid license for what they're going to be doing. So those references where you're just getting the employer to tell you that that person did work there, that was their position, that's all you're getting. I mean, you're not going to get any of the dirty laundry, that person was a pot stirrer behind the scenes, making everyone have a miserable experience, and we're so glad they're gone. They're not going to tell you that.
Sure.
But references are important to do that, even though that's all you're going to get. Every once in a while you'll get you'll get someone that will tell you more than they were supposed to tell you. But still, I would encourage that be part of the hiring process. And then expecting too much too soon from the applicant that you get in the door. It generally takes about 90 days for a new employee to really know the lay of the land, know the politics, know who they need to go to when they have a question to ask. So if you get someone in the door and you just expect them to hit the ground running, that hit the ground running may have them running out the door. So I do say, use that, generally employers, in my experience, oftentimes use that 90 days to get rid of someone. If they're doing a bad job in 90 days, we don't have any liability if we let them go in 90 days. Well, that's not a good way to think about it, because people are not really expendable. You need those people that can come in and be really committed to your company. So yeah, if you expect too much out of them right away, give them enough rope so that they can learn, and give them the tools that they need to be successful. If they don't have a desk, if they don't have a phone, if they're going to be out selling something for your company and they don't have business cards when they walk in the door, I mean, those are things that are really to show that your investment in them right away. But you need to do some things up front to get ready for them, to onboard them, so that they feel like this is a great place to be, and I'm going to stay here for a little while. They may not, don't expect that they're going to stay with you forever. And if you're hiring somebody thinking, oh, this person's going to be here with us for the rest of their career, that doesn't exist anymore. And if you think that way, you probably just need a little adapt that just a little bit, because this isn't the world where you are going to be hired and you're going to have that job for life. Because I don't think that there really are any too many job for lives in our lives anymore.
Well, Lauren, this has been rich, and I thank you for that. Talk a little bit about your practice. You're an HR consultant. Talk a little bit about your practice and what you do and the types of things that you focus on. And then we'll get some contact information if somebody wants to contact you.
Perfect. Well, I've been in this Louisville area for a long time. I've worked in several different industries in the human resources world. Over 30 years, I have worked for other employers, and in 2019, I had an opportunity. The company that I was working for was closing. It was a hospital, a small hospital in southern Indiana, and it was closing. And so I had the decision at that point if I was going to start looking for another job or something else. And so I decided at some point during that process that I was going to start my own company. And really, the behind the scenes, my thinking was that there are so many employers that I have come across that don't really have an HR person, that don't have, really, the knowledge that they need to really manage the legality of the things when they're hiring employees, or when they are have some tough conversations where they're going to have to let some staff go because the business isn't thriving, or they're going to have to let somebody go because the employee is not doing the job that they need to be doing. And they don't have any type of structure. So I really made that decision, and I did some outreach to people that are in the industry, and I was strongly encouraged. Yes, there is a huge need for employers. I mean, there's more need than there are consultants, and absolutely encouraged me to go out hang my own shingle, if you will. And so I did that at probably it was the beginning of May in 2019. And what I do and what my business is all about is to connect with other businesses that are in need. They know what they need to do to, how many widgets they need to make or whatever it is their business is. But this other piece, because they need employees to do that, but they don't have the knowledge with the HR knowledge. So I like to go in and really find out where they are and what are the things that are keeping them awake at night because of the employee stuff, whether it's hiring them or whether it is onboarding them. And so I like to find out where that employer is, and then really find out what kind of things I can do that Out of the Woods HR can do to make their lives easier. And that could be something like I do help employers with onboarding with new candidates, but I also do much more finding out when that employee is coming on board. Do you have a handbook? Do you have policies and procedures? What kinds of things do you have in place that are going to ensure that that employee feels like they know exactly what the company's expectations are, and where are they going to get that? What kind of documentation do you have? And so those are some of the things that I do. But one of the things that I also offer and that we provide to employers, and I got some real great experience with this in 2020, was remote training. And there are so many compliance trainings that some companies of a certain size have to have. And so there are trainings on harassment in the workplace, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Some of those things that are absolutely mandatory and with employers. I have the certification to be able to deliver those trainings, and I have been on this platform, on this Zoom platform for enough time that I've been able to deliver that training. And so those are some things that Out of the Woods HR also provides. There are times in my life that I have done employee investigations when there's a labor situation. So I can do that as well, but there's a whole list of things that Out of the Woods HR can help employers with, and every employer is different. There are some employers that just want me to come in and, okay, 90 days, help us get a handbook together, help us get some policies and procedures, and then you can go your way. So whatever that employer, whatever their needs are, I want to know what those are, and I want to know how I can best help them get where they need to be.
And do you have a website that they can refer to see the services that you provide? And give that and also your contact information.
Okay, great. My website is Out of the Woods, OUTOFTHEWOODSHR.com. OutofTheWoodsHR.com. And they can reach me at Laura at Out of the Woods HR. So that's my email address. And then if they go to my website, they'll be able to get in touch with me. As far as, the best way to get in touch with me is to contact me through my email. But my phone number is on my website as well.
Great. Well, thank you again for being with us and providing some valuable information. I think that employers generally, and employees, we're in this uncertain time, and things are changing rapidly. So having some information or just some guidelines and advice is really important. So I appreciate you doing that, especially at this time. So let me also thank the listeners and viewers. If you saw us on YouTube, if you would like more information, I won't go into the concept of Thrive at this point, but please go to our website at thrivecolivingcommunities.org to find out more about the concept. And there are many ways that you can support the podcast and support our efforts. And those are all listed in the show notes, as well as Laura's contact information. So please go there and take a look and support us any way you can. We're on your favorite podcast station, as well as on YouTube on a regular basis. Also, I'll clarify for anyone who was seeing my apparent stripes that I was in front of a window and lots of sun pouring through, so I changed that. So no worries about my health and striped illnesses or maladies. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Laura, and we'll see you next time. If you enjoy our podcast and the concept, there are many ways for you to support Thrive Co-Living Communities. Please visit our GoFundMe page to learn more about our philosophy and goals. There you can donate to help us develop our first co-living community, or share the link to spread the word about our mission. You can also support us while you shop using Amazon Smile or Kroger's Community Rewards program. These programs allow you to support your favorite organizations while doing your everyday shopping and give you an easy way to help us grow. Finally, support us on Patreon and receive exclusive first looks at new podcasts, behind the scenes content, and other exciting promotions. We also encourage you to support other sustainable ventures. Check out Boxable.com, BOXABL.com, a company that shares our philosophy on affordable and sustainable living, and use our affiliate link to make your purchase. If you're a Tesla fan like me, You can also use our link for Tesla to earn rewards for solar panels or solar roof technology. By using this link, you can reduce your energy grid reliance and support clean energy, and you get $500 off the purchase of a Tesla solar roof, and we get $500 credit towards our purchase of a solar roof. To learn more about the many ways you can support Thrive Co-Living Communities, please see specifics down in the show notes below. Thanks again for your support, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.